Welcome to Us in My Life. Love you and cause I love you so much. Oh, 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 I just love you. I just like help. I just like help. I just like you too. I just like you. I
That is Ariana Stanley singing help. So, and that's what we're doing on the show today is help. And so that's just wonderful way to kick off our show. Hi, this is the Optimize My Life show brought to you by the Hope Collection. And today we have the pleasure of speaking with Nutrition Matters with Beth Wyman. And so as a registered dietitian, you have so much knowledge and so much information to share. So we're looking forward to it. Thank you. Welcome to the show, Beth.
Thanks. And I will call you after this because I did get your voicemail.
Okay.
But I've been back to back all day. So today I thought I would talk a little bit about diabetes myths. I know we've covered diabetes before, but I wanted to approach it more from like the myths of things that people feel like you have to do in order to keep it under control. It's just like usually with these topics, I take it from things I've been hearing a lot of lately, and that's really been resurfacing. So I wanted to touch on that, and I hopefully don't sound too congested. I am going to make myself a cup of tea to try to help with it too. But I am definitely congested, and I probably have to admit that it's not allergies at some point to myself. Because that's my biggest thing. I'll be like, it's just allergies. And it's like, no.
It's something in the air. It's something in the air.
Yeah, it's not, yeah. So I just, I'm trying to do this anyway. So some of the, I guess, they're not necessarily, I don't know if we want to call them myths or just misinformation, but there's so much out there. And one of the things that I would really encourage everybody to do is, if you do have diabetes, seek out diabetes education, right? There are certified diabetes educators like myself. Typically, if you have an endocrinology office or even a primary care office, they will have somebody or have a set of people to refer to, especially an endocrinology office. They'll have somebody almost always right there from the endocrinologist that I've had experience with. And it'll either be typically a nurse or a dietitian, and they will give you education about food and diabetes, about your medications and how they work, how they affect how your body interacts with the food that you're eating, because depending on the type of medicine you're on, your reaction to food will be slightly different. Some medications you have a higher instance of low blood sugars, right, or hypoglycemia, where other ones you don't. And so there's so many variables that today we'll talk about some really general stuff, but I always encourage people to go and get education on what will work best specifically for their body. So it's, we're not all the same. There's no one size fits all, especially for this. So just things to keep in mind as we talk today. So one of the biggest things I hear is you have to cut out all carbs. And I've even heard that doctors have told them that they have to go low carb or no carb, and we'll touch on both of those because they're different, right? Low carb just means there's not as many, and there's really no definition of what is low carb. It's just less. And then there's no carb where you're not having any at all. And I know we've talked about carbohydrates being your primary fuel source. So what happens if you don't have any, right? You'll still live. It's just not pleasant. One, just huge food groups you're cutting out, right? Like we're talking, you're no longer going to be eating fruit. You're no longer going to be eating whole grains. Like, we're not just talking cakes, cookies, pastries, candy, that kind of thing. We're talking about other foods that are really doing great things for your body. Would technically be all gone if you were doing a no carb, completely no carb diet. And that's not anything, as a very general rule of thumb, anything that's cutting out a whole food group is not a great choice. Like, it's taking it too far, and you're losing focus on, like, the balance between health and life. At that point, yeah, and just, the enjoyment of life and really getting in a variety of nutrients. You can't do that very well if you're cutting out whole food groups. It's always interesting to me when you hear somebody talking about, like, cutting out whole food groups, but then adds in a supplement to replace all of the things you're no longer getting. I'm like, well, if you kept the food in, you wouldn't need the supplement. And then, like, usually it's a lot cheaper to just eat the food than to buy the supplement. So, and on top of that, this is a little bit away from the diabetes focus, but on top of that, it's been shown that the, like, antioxidants and vitamins and minerals in specifically, like, fruits and vegetables work better when you eat the whole vegetable. And so even if it's like a supplement powder that says it's made from whole fruits and vegetables, it doesn't work the same. And that is an area of research as to exactly why it doesn't work exactly the same, because technically you're getting in powdered fruits and vegetables, but because you don't have the whole item anymore, it's losing something, right? Or it's losing the interactions between the different elements, and so it's not quite as effective as actually eating the fruit or vegetable. So anyway, my slight tangent on supplements, I guess. There's a time and a place, but you're going to be better off eating actual food. And if you're going completely no carb, you're cutting out huge sections of foods and huge food groups and you can't get that in. You can't do that anymore. So no carb, you end up burning fat primarily for energy, and you will actually start to see some muscle wasting because you'll probably start pulling from your muscles for energy as well. So there are definite side effects. Yes, you'll see fat loss because you will have to burn fat for energy. And so a lot of people go on, like, crash diets, typically end up losing weight really, really quickly. And, yeah, a lot of it's probably fat, but they're also losing some strength and some muscle mass too, just by nature of how they're doing it. And that's never what you want. You don't ever want to be losing muscle mass. It's something that naturally happens as we age. Everybody, as we start to age, we start to lose muscle mass. And then, like, working in long-term care for a couple years, your whole focus is trying to get people to gain that muscle mass back, or at least what they do have, because it just helps to give you a better quality of life, because you can move around and do things a lot easier. So those couple of years in long-term care definitely put some perspective on, like, how I eat now in my 30s and how I take care of myself now, to kind of prepare, because my family lives so long. Just so I'm like, I have to get ready now. But usually I pace while I do these, and I don't think I can do that today because it's just I'm so congested. Yeah, it's allergies, right? So low carb is not the answer. You're denying yourself your primary fuel source, and it's really not sustainable either. It makes it very hard to go out to eat with friends. It makes it hard to, like, plan meals and all these things because suddenly you've got these really big restrictions. There is there's some truth to low carb because the definition is so loose. And it's not so much that it's right, like there's a certain number of carbs per day. It's more about if you were overeating carbohydrates, going to a normal amount is going to feel like you're going low carb. So it's interesting because it's not necessarily that you're going on a special diet or like a diabetes diet. You're truly just going to a general healthy diet, and it's sometimes so different than the way somebody was eating previously that it feels like, oh my God, I'm going low carb. And it's like, no, like this is average.
Back to normal.
Yeah, this is normal, and certainly changing where those carbohydrates are coming from becomes important, right? And again, it depends where you started, but moving towards fruits and whole grains and beans and legumes as your sources of carbohydrates are just, I mean, those are steps for a general healthy diet, but so it's going to feel different, and it's like, oh, am I on like a Mediterranean diet now? And I'm like, if you need to call it that, sure. But it's truly just quote-unquote normal eating is usually where I start people off when they come to me and are looking to get control of their diabetes. I'm like, let's just rein it into normal first, and then we can play around with it more if we need to. But for the most part, just stepping back to like a normal level is enough. It's plenty. So I was looking, I had somebody that was saying that they aim for 20 grams of carbohydrates in a day on their low-carb diet. And to put it in perspective, typically for a diabetic diet, for somebody who truly has to like count carbohydrates, which not everybody does. It depends on what you're doing for medications. It depends on your lifestyle. There's a bunch of different factors. But if you were to count the grams of carbohydrates, right, the very typical recommendation is 45 to 60 grams per meal. And then about 15 to 30, depending, per snack. So if you're aiming for 20 grams of carbs per day, like that's a snack. That's not, you're not getting what you need out of that. It's so low. I don't know. Conceivably, I don't understand. I guess, I mean, I get it. I understand that you can go that low and your diet would essentially be focused on like meat and vegetables. Because vegetables do have a little bit of carbohydrates in them. So once you get to, and typically when you're looking at diabetic exchanges, once you get to like 3 cups of vegetables in a sitting, you would count it as a carbohydrate serving. So with the amount of vegetables that you're probably eating, you would most likely be getting most of your carbs from vegetables. And then I don't know if you get like a choice of how you want to spend your 20 grams of carbs in a day, but that is unbelievably low. And really, I know we've touched on like the carnivore diet and keto diet and things in other episodes too, and this kind of falls into the same bucket, is you're unnecessarily restricting something that just really doesn't need to be restricted to that level. If you stick with moderation, which Americans aren't great at, like, if you stick with moderation, you're going to get where you want to go. It's just, it's a process, and it requires the commitment to try every single time you're eating. I've heard some other ones too of, like, I had somebody that said, well, I'm not supposed to eat anything white. And I'm like, tell me more about that, because, like, cauliflower is white. And potatoes are white, but if you eat a potato with the skin on it, you're going to be getting in fiber. And, like, now things are even more complicated, because you can get, like, a high fiber white bread. I think I've mentioned before, that's how I trick my children. I get high fiber white bread.
Yeah,
Or you get into, like, well, I can't have anything white, so I got the spinach tortilla wraps, right? The spinach burrito wraps. And I'm like, it's colored with spinach to turn it green. It's not made out of spinach. Like, those are two different things. Right? It's
like
same with the tomato basil wraps.
My husband
What was that?
said when I was teasing Ron about, just having white bread, wheat and rye, and he bought white bread. I said, no, you have to have, and he said, well, I'll toast it. It'll make it brown. It's good try, but
so close. And now it's brown, so it's fine. Yeah.
Try.
Yeah, it's the lengths that we will go to, right, to kind of try to comply. Or it's like, well, this pastry I had was a nice golden brown, so it's not white. I'm like, eh.
Oh, there's a strawberry jelly filling. That's a fruit, isn't it?
It at one point it was. It is no longer. But these are the things that we come up with to try to, like, justify, right? And the mental gymnastics that get done really are quite ingenious sometimes. I'm actually a little bit impressed occasionally, where I'm like, oh, wow, that's, you really worked hard on that to figure out how you can justify working it. I think at this point I've mentioned so many things. I grew up with, my mom was like, pie is a breakfast food, and really, like, food, how is that any different than pie? The GM filling made me think of it. I'm like, how is it any different? And it's not, which sort of speaks to, our breakfast pastries a good breakfast option? The answer is no. They're not. They're a special occasion food, is what I like to call them, because nothing is truly off the table unless you're allergic to it. It's really about how much and how often. So it's for me, I don't know. One of my big things is, like, if I'm going to have something like that, it's going to be really, really good, right? Like, I'm not getting, I don't know, unless you have, like, a grocery store that's got an amazing bakery, but, like, I'm not going to go get a really, like a run-of-the-mill packaged pastry. I'm going to go find a small local bakery and get something really good. That's like, I'm sure I could find a chocolate croissant here that I liked, but it's like, I had a chocolate croissant when I was in Germany as a teenager, and nothing has ever compared, and so I just refused to try. I was like, if I would need a chocolate croissant, I will fly to Germany, which is clearly not going to happen, but I'm like, nothing's going to be as good as that one was.
We went to the Lindt Chocolate Factory in Cologne, Germany, and it's like, oh, the chocolate costs so much less there. Okay, but adding in the airfare hotel,
It's not, yeah. It's not the same. It's definitely not a comparable cost to fly over and get it there. So I just did some quick math because I was curious. So I rounded it to a 2,000 calorie a day diet. That's what's used on like nutrition fact labels, and it gives us something to go on, right? Since I'm not creating like a whole person to do this conversation. So if somebody was eating 2,000 calories a day, for carbohydrates a day, they would need 250 grams of carbohydrates in a day to be like just super average, super normal, super average. Which comes out to what we were talking about. Like for them, it would be more like 60 grams of carbs per meal and then like 15 to 30 per snack, depending on how many snacks they had. So, yeah, just as a rule of thumb, it kind of puts into perspective how incredibly low it is when somebody's trying to eat 20 grams of carbs in a day. You know what hasn't come up sometimes? Sometimes what comes up, too, is that for diabetes, you have to suddenly eat super low carb and go on, like, a crash low-carb diet, too. Or, I'm sorry, low-calorie diet. I haven't seen that in a while, so hopefully that's fading out because that can actually get pretty dangerous if you're just purely not eating enough. Like, yes, you'll lose weight, and then it makes your body – it makes it a little bit easier for your pancreas to function if it's type 2 diabetes. And so, yes, you'll see, some improvement, but at what cost? So we talked about low carb. We talked about nothing white. One of the other ones I heard this week, actually, was not to eat after, like, 7 o'clock, right? And this is the first time I've actually heard that in relation to diabetes. I usually hear that from people that are looking to lose weight. And really, everybody, your body is made, the way that it cycles through digestion and the way that the hormone cycles in terms of like hunger cues and things, we are made to eat about every 3 to 4 hours. That's super normal. And that's why I put in my lunch delivery order before we got on this call, so that it'll be here when we get off, and then I can eat. And it's when you get in that cycle, right, and with what I'm experiencing now, is that you notice that you get hungry more frequently. And if you take a step back and look at it, it's your body getting hungry about every 3 to 4 hours. And so for me, I ate breakfast at 9 o'clock, so naturally I'm going to start getting hungry during this podcast. I did not plan it out well today, and I'll eat right afterwards. And that's just mastery of the, like, working with your body, working with the natural cycle, right? We think of body cycles, like for women, we think of cycles of like every 28 days, or we hear about like our circadian rhythm, which is a 24-hour cycle, but you go through a lot of different things, for lack of a better word, during that 24-hour cycle. And so we're meant to have hormone changes every 3 to 4 hours that cue us to get hungry. So when I have somebody that starts to eat regularly and they come to me and they're like, I'm starving if I eat breakfast. I'm so hungry by like 12 o'clock. I'm like, yeah, because you need lunch. Like, that's good. That means it's working. It means that your metabolism is up and running and you're utilizing that energy instead of just storing it. So it's a sign of a healthy metabolism, and it's a sign that your body is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Because if we don't eat regularly, we don't put in food on a regular cycle, you might not get those hunger cues, and your body we're just made to survive. Like, your body is just trying to get through it. So it will store stuff instead of using it, right, and get very conservative with what you're taking in in terms of how it utilizes it because it doesn't know when there's more food coming versus it gets pretty wasteful. If it knows more is coming, it's like, oh, well, I can use a couple extra calories to do this, or I can, use a little bit more energy to whatever, do something else. And this is where you see like all kinds, like better wound healing. And I'm like, with my background, I'm talking like actual wounds, but even like a paper cut or like it's weird. I scraped my finger on my basement ceiling. And like, it's healing up pretty well. I was putting away a bin and we have, yeah, I was halfway through saying the sentence and I'm like, this is weird. But because I feed myself well, I know that it's going to heal up well and maybe faster than somebody who isn't taking as good care of themselves in terms of what they're putting in, how frequently, and things like that. So there's this trickle-down effect into more than just weight, more than just diabetes. But actually, in the frame of diabetes, which I don't have, but in terms of like healing up cuts and things, if your blood sugar is not under control, your body has a harder time healing even small cuts. And so that's one of the things that if anybody that's listening with diabetes has ever done, like, there's probably a better way to like say this, but like the foot inspections or like had your feet inspected at a doctor's visit where they take a look at them and see what they look like. Part of what they're looking for is if you do have any cuts, like how they're healing. And because those are tiny little blood vessels, it's very far away from your heart compared to anything else. And so it's a really good indicator of how your circulation is still doing with the diabetes because it can impact nerve function, right? So you can have like diabetic neuropathy where you can't really feel your feet and things, but it also affects your circulation and the blood flow too, which in turn affects how well you can heal up even little cuts. Like we're not talking big wounds, like even little cuts. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I used to do wound rounds with the nurses in the hospitals. That was fascinating. Just there is such a big impact on like nutrition on wound healing. It's something we don't normally think about necessarily as the general public. But there is a huge impact on nutrition, and that is an area where supplementation comes into play. So I guess this is something I don't normally go into. My frame of reference on a lot of things with supplementation comes from like an acute care setting of like, okay, we need to heal this wound. Okay, we need to fix this imbalance or like refeeding syndrome where somebody who had been truly starving and we're restarting food. So there's always a time and place for supplements, but they're not necessarily as frequent as we always think. So if I admit to myself that I have a cold, right, for supplements, it would behoove me to start taking some vitamin C and zinc, which actually I will do after this, because I should really admit to myself that it might be a cold at this point. And that will help support my immune system as it works to fight off the cold. So like I said, time and place, definitely a time and a place. So anyway, we were talking about not eating after 7 is how I got off on this. I feel like today has been full of tangents on my part, so I hope everybody loves it. Not eating after 7 with diabetes completely depends on the rest of your day and your bedtime, right? When you go to sleep. So if you say your dinner time is 6 o'clock, right? But you don't go to bed until 11. That's a 5-hour window. You would need to eat again just from the standpoint of being human. But then with diabetes, most people have better blood sugar control and see lower finger stick numbers or glucose readings in the morning if they have a small snack right before bed. So in this instance, if you're going to bed at 11, I would want you to have that snack at like 10:30. Like really, truly right before bed. It gives your body and your insulin something to work on overnight. What can sometimes happen is you can drop low overnight, and because you're not, sometimes it'll actually wake people up, and they'll wake up a little bit hungry and go find a snack. And it's your body trying to preserve itself and kind of cueing you to wake up and eat something. Sometimes you don't, and so you go low overnight. Your body will attempt to self-correct, and so you'll release some of the stored sugar that you have usually in your liver, and your body's not good. It just kind of dumps it in. It's not regulated, right? It's not dumping in like, oh, let me put in 15 grams, wait 15 minutes, and adjust. It just dumps a whole bunch in. It's like, it's too low here. And that's how you end up high in the morning. Not everyone's like this. Yeah, not everyone is like this. Yeah, it's called dawn phenomenon. There are some people that are the opposite and I mean, I've seen like one or two where they need to have very low carb at night. And that's definitely not a type 1 diabetic thing. That's more of a type 2. And like I said, I think I've seen it twice. I know for sure once, maybe twice, where they do need to be lower carb at night in order to have better control and lower numbers in the morning. But very few and far between. The vast majority of people do much better with that snack right before bed. And I'm talking something small, where you're getting protein and carbohydrates. And so I usually will recommend, again, completely depends on the person, but like an 8-ounce glass of milk or a yogurt, low added sugar yogurt, Greek yogurt specifically, will have enough protein and carbohydrates in it to help mitigate that happening overnight. So it's not, or like there's some people that do like cheese and crackers or like an apple and peanut butter or something. So it's not a huge snack, but a little something to essentially hold you over. Yeah. Yeah. So that nothing after 8 o'clock is definitely a myth. And I guess if you went to bed at 8:30, then yeah, that works.
But still, it completely that's a long time of, being without, any nutrients or any, things for your blood sugar. So, yeah, I had heard when I was in Weight Watchers a couple of years ago, the woman was saying, I don't eat anything after whatever time it was. And so I brushed my teeth so that I got, but again, like you said, that's a long time unless they're getting up at 5 in the morning and starting their day. Which, of course, when we were working, since I had to be at the one time, my job started at 7:30 in the morning. So there were times, but like right now for me to when I'm getting up at 8:30, big difference. So that's a very good point.
And again, exactly like you're saying, it depends on your schedule, right? It depends on how your particular day flows, as to whether or not that's reasonable. And this is something that comes up a lot, like meal timing and spacing, not only with diabetes, but with people that work shift work, right? I'm like, well, if you're at work, 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., like, please eat after 8 p.m. You're still up and running around and doing stuff. Or even my people that work overnight, I'm like, you have to eat overnight. That's your day, essentially, because then you're asleep during the day. It's just shifted. So a lot of it is learning to work with your body and essentially – oh, go ahead.
I was just saying shift work is so hard on the body. My brother worked third shift for a number of years, And it just wreaks havoc with your body, really, your sleep patterns, everything. So
it does. It takes a toll. It adds extra stress on your body. But yeah. So I give those people a lot of credit. I have done a few overnight shifts in retail because that's when they do inventory and resetting the store when they move everything around, and then people come in the next day and are like, I can't find anything. There was a time in college where I did that, and I was like, oh, it's more money than if I was sleeping, is kind of how I looked at it. Yeah, that's tough. It would screw me up for a little bit afterwards when I did those.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so essentially diabetes, getting a diagnosis of diabetes is sometimes a reset for people to realize they need to focus on listening to their body's cues and to working with their body to keep themselves healthy. And so it's not so much that you're suddenly on a diabetic diet. Sometimes you're just suddenly paying attention and eating a general healthy diet, like I said in the beginning, and actually feeding yourself well more than anything else. So the idea, I wanted to go back to the nothing white. Sort of the idea behind it was that things that are not white, so like brown bread, right, that we were talking about, tend to be whole grain. And so by doing that, you're getting in more fiber. And now that fiber is being added into stuff, it kind of defeats the purpose of saying, oh, nothing white. But so the goal would be to look for fiber content. For something to be considered a good source of fiber, which is a term regulated by the FDA, it has to have at least 20% of your daily value, which comes up to I think it's 5.5 grams. So when I'm teaching people how to read labels, I usually say look for 5 grams or more. And that's actually really hard to find. So something like bread, if you can find 2 to 3 grams of fiber in a slice of bread, that's pretty good. The goal for an entire day would be 25 to 30 grams of fiber. And so if somebody's starting to work up to that, you wouldn't want to suddenly move to all whole grains, put in lots of fruits and vegetables, and add a fiber supplement. Your body's going to freak out. You're going to have a lot of gas and bloating and abdominal cramping because your body's not used to processing that. And it's actually something you would want to work up slowly and maybe start with okay, I'm going to have change one thing at a time. Introduce the fruits and vegetables every day. Get that down. Then introduce the whole grains every day. Get that down. And fiber is something that sometimes you need to supplement. So if you're still not hitting your goal, then you can think about adding in a supplement. So it's doing it in steps and letting your body adjust and not just kind of running into something full force. And it's one of those things where when people are ready to make a change, they want to make it instantly, but it's going slow like that and building on it is, one, easier on your intestines, so you'll be comfortable, but two, you're more likely to create long, sustainable habits instead of when you do a major overhaul, it will last a couple of weeks, and then you tend to kind of fall back into it or fall back out of it, I should say, when something changes, when a schedule changes, when something gets hard, when something throws you off, whatever it might be. So, yeah, nothing white was, I think, originally intended to help people look for higher fiber foods. But that's not always the case now because fiber gets added to stuff a lot. Breads, tortillas, pasta, you can get high fiber. You can actually get chickpea pasta as well, and that's what I tend to do for myself. That's one of the things that did not pass the kids' taste test. They were not a fan of chickpea pasta, but I really like it. It's got a little bit more of a nutty flavor to it than regular pasta, but because of the fiber and protein content, I find it keeps me feeling fuller for longer. Like I like spaghetti and meatballs, right? Like, but I tend to be hungry again right after. So, but if I do a chickpea pasta instead, because there's more fiber and more protein, not only is it helping me get to my fiber and protein goals for the day, but it's also just, I'm more comfortable. I'm not hungry again, like right, an hour or two afterwards, or feeling like I could eat like a bottomless bowl of it. Like I definitely could do with regular spaghetti. I just feel like with spaghetti, I could just keep going.
Oh, it's funny. I always see my mom, my grandfather was Pasquale Giurio, very Italian. But I always tease I make a terrible Italian because I cut my spaghetti. I can't twirl it, and I don't like chickpeas. Oh. But maybe I could use the chickpea pasta. That might, that might work.
I really like it.
It's worth, with anything, it's worth a try. So, that's in the aisle. I'll check that.
Yeah, it's in the same aisle as pasta. And
I've seen
and
it,
now there are, it's worth a try. Although, you know what? I did a taste test with the kids where I did regular mac and cheese and chickpea pasta mac and cheese, and my daughter ate both of them. I don't think she really even noticed the difference. But my son actually preferred the chickpea pasta mac and cheese. Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting. I don't know. I made sure I did like the same brand. So it was this theoretically like the same sauce, just different pasta was my goal. So, but he preferred the chickpea one. I don't know what that's about.
But then it's like never mind, it will come back to me. I can't think of what I was going to say.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm just looking at what I had as my notes of like different myths, and then I feel like we've kind of talked about this throughout the whole episode. Is I sometimes hear the question of like, will I ever eat normally again? And that comes back to what do you consider normal? And what's considered like the standard American diet is low fiber, high saturated fat, too high in carbohydrates, too low in proteins usually. So no, and nor should you want to go back to that because it's not meeting your needs. It's not adequate. But so when that question comes up, I typically ask people, what are you missing? Right? What's going on that you feel like you're not eating normally? And it typically comes down to like a certain like flavor profile that they're missing, or so it's like, I really miss whatever, like a fried chicken sandwich or something, and I'm like, okay, so having one, once a month or something is not going to hurt anything. Like that's not enough to make a difference. So it's something that nothing's ever completely off the table. It's about how much and how often. Or sometimes the will I ever eat normal again is like, well, this is so much work to prepare. And so then it really is a question of how do we streamline meal planning and meal prepping so that you're not in the kitchen all the time. And so then it's like, okay, yes, I'm going to make dinner, but I'm going to double the recipe so I've got dinner for the next 2 days or something. So it's finding ways around it. Usually it's not, usually I can work somebody through that feeling of like, well, I'm not normal anymore the way I'm eating, or it's like, well, everybody else eats. Some of it's definitely like emotional and comparing yourself to others, but it's like, well, everybody else has dessert. Why can't I have it? I'm like, well, is everybody else actually having dessert, or are you just out to dinner and you're seeing somebody else have their one special occasion dessert that they're having this month? Like, there's a little bit of perception that happens too, especially if you're looking at like the social aspect of like, if you're, it's one of those things that takeout and going out to eat is so readily available to us, right? Like, I ordered takeout and it's being delivered to my door. Sometimes it's just no longer a special occasion. Like, if that's part of your everyday life, it's no longer special. And so you can no longer treat it as special. So if somebody's going out to dinner with friends and for them it's just, you know, they go out to dinner 3 nights a week or order it or whatever, it's no longer special. Like, you got to treat it like a regular meal. You have to try to make it half your plate vegetables, a quarter starch, a quarter protein. It is what it is. But like, say it is a special occasion and you're at like a wedding or something. Sure, eat it, whatever. Like, you're not going to a wedding. Well, I mean, it depends, but typically you're not going to a wedding like once a week.
Yeah.
So it's really not going to have that big of an impact. So if you're out to dinner and you're seeing somebody that is having their, you know, once a month special treat, it's going to feel like you are being deprived, or it could feel like you're being deprived, but really you've just already used your special treat somewhere else. That's all.
Yeah, you know, and it's I found with myself, what's helped me the most is really portion control. So
yeah,
and again, you know, if we do have pizza, we get a very small one, and I'll have one piece instead of 2 or 3 or what I used to. And I find that, you know, so I'm not denying myself that I can't have it at all, but I just watch my portion, you know, how much. My doctor had sent me to a diabetic nutritionist, and I went Thursday for the first time. And
yeah, good.
She kind of pointed out that I am not getting enough protein. And I said, well, I'm having, you know, we're eating lots of salads, and I have the Honey Nut Cheerios because I tried plain Cheerios. I just couldn't take it. And honey, you know, with strawberries or bananas on it for breakfast. And she was like, but you're not getting any protein. So one thing she suggested for me is to hard boil a couple eggs. And so have 1 egg, you know, and if you do have a piece of toast, have 1 instead of 2, and put some peanut butter on it, so that, you know, I'm getting the protein, because that is what she was noticing with my, you know, when I'm going over what I'm doing, what I'm eating, is that I'm not getting enough protein.
Yeah, and that goes back to what I was saying, is that as we age, one of the big things is protecting that muscle mass, and part of that is getting in enough protein. And they tend not to be our easy grab-and-go food items, right? Like, I can't walk down the snack aisle and necessarily find, like, a nice lean protein snack to take home. There are higher protein options when it comes to, like, pre-made snack foods, but this is where I usually just pack my own snack, and I've definitely taken, like, a piece of chicken and just eaten that, or like today my snack is going to be strawberries with 2 low-fat cheese sticks, so that I'm getting in my protein from the low-fat cheese. I'm getting in some carbohydrates from my strawberries to make it like a well-rounded snack. You can find like meat sticks that are like a low-fat meat stick where it's not just straight pepperoni. But that's, not always what you want. But the eggs are a really quick, easy way to add in some protein content to your meals. Mm-hmm. And it's something that you can make ahead and keep in the fridge. So it's almost like a grab and go option. You can't really throw it in your purse, but like it's there, it's ready to eat as soon as you open the fridge. So it can be really helpful. Yeah.
And actually, I should do that. Late this morning, Ron had a 9:00 appointment for his hearing aids because he was having trouble. And then I had to run over to the nursing home because my mom had a rough night last night. So, so we were rushing, out this morning. And so I didn't have breakfast because his appointment was changed. It was supposed to be this afternoon. Greg called and said, hey, can you make it, I'm here now. Can you make it in 15 minutes? So we got up and ran.
Oh, jeez.
And so, but having, if I had made those hard-boiled eggs, that's something I could take with me. And so things like that, again, just being mindful and prepared for something like that.
Yeah, and that's one of those, it's something I've fallen out of a little bit, but I used to prep some snack things like that for the week on Sundays, and that is certainly a habit that I would benefit from getting back into. And I know my kids will eat them too, which is always good because then they've got another snack option that they can handle on their own, right? They're not going to cook an egg, but they can certainly grab one out of the fridge and eat it. Because it's, I don't know. I try to teach them now. I don't know how much of it they'll retain, but doing my best.
But it's like what you were saying earlier that, about, what you're eating. And one of the things that I've done is when I make stuffed green peppers, which is, to me, that nothing says fall like, stuffed green peppers. But using the ground turkey, which is lower in fat, and when you put what made me think about with the chickpea, the macaroni and cheese. Because of the cheese, you probably don't notice the pasta as much, whereas the same thing, with the putting the tomato sauce in, the ground turkey tastes the same as ground beef.
Yep. Yeah, and that's an easy switch of either for ground beef going to ground turkey, which is typically leaner and not as expensive as getting the lean ground beef is really the biggest thing. Lean ground beef can get pricey, and the lean ground turkey is typically not as expensive as the lean ground beef. So, yeah. And if you, like I do it with, I should say I have done it with tacos because the meat is so seasoned, you don't really notice the difference. Yeah, so that's another one where you can make that swap.
All the times he's been to Mexico, Ron does not like Mexican food. He doesn't like the taco powder or whatever, the spices.
Oh, no.
So I very rarely use ground beef or turkey, other than, that, but I have found he does like my version of fajitas. So, when we have, again, if we get I see that he just bought a whole roasting chicken. and we like to roast our own chicken, and because we know what's in it, as opposed to we'll pick up rotisserie chicken from time to time. It's no problem, but when we have leftover chicken like that, I've even bought the chicken strips and then some veggies, just saute that and put it in a wrap or a taco shell, and make just a really delicious quick meal. So you can. It's my version of a fajita, an un-Mexican fajita.
It's a low seasoning, not spicy version.
Yes, right.
But hey, listen, it works, and you're getting in the protein content. With wraps, you can actually get high fiber wraps, so you can do a lot of good stuff with that, definitely.
Yes.
But it's in using like the 2,000 calorie a day example, very average protein intake for that would be 125 grams a day, which is truly will start to feel like a high protein diet because you have to be so focused on it to get it in. Mm-hmm. So it's average. You're just going to normal. But to go from not getting enough to trying to get in enough, it's going to feel like it's high protein when you're like I said, normally with people I work them up to an average general healthy diet, and that's all you need. And that's what it takes to get them moving in the right direction on whatever it is, on their cholesterol, their diabetes, their heart disease and hypertension, their weight loss, anything like that can kind of be grouped together into a general healthy diet. Doesn't sell well. You can't be like, I have a special diabetes diet. It's like, no, you need moderation.
You can call it special if you want to, if it helps you.
It's just, I'm not one to make up a fancy name for a diet and be like, oh, it needs to be this. Like, no, it is what it is.
It's so Linda diet. So.
So I know we are almost out of time, so I wanted to make sure I put in where people can find me. So I am getting back into it and most active on Instagram at Beth Wyman _RD, as in Registered Dietitian. You can also find me in the Optimize My Life Facebook group. There is a special chat channel for this podcast, specifically Nutrition Matters. And I am moving towards doing really leaning into the meal planning app that I have and really utilizing that better or leveraging it better for other people to use. I use it and it's great. So there'll be more that comes out on that, as well as I just had a call with the app yesterday to kind of talk through my ideas. So there'll be more that comes out with that too, in terms of how to use the meal planning app, how you can get access to it, because there is a little bit of a learning curve to it. So I'm like, I don't want to just kind of give away access to it. There needs to be a way for people to learn as well. So working through some stuff on that, but hopefully in the next couple weeks I'll have some details on how people can get in on that if they're looking to learn to eat healthier but don't really need a one-on-one visit all the time, and they're not looking necessarily for a lot of nutrition education. They're just looking for help with planning out their meals, finding recipes that fit their goals, and staying on track.
Perfect. Well, Thank you, Beth. Hey, country boy. I had to change the battery in my mouse, so so I didn't see right away that you had joined us. But good afternoon. So But thank you, Beth, and we look forward to, again, all your calls. And we'll, this was very point on, especially with me just going through, speaking with the dietitian in our, in our doctor's office. So it's really very helpful. So with that, I'll say good day. Have a wonderful afternoon. The call that Ron was going to be on has been postponed. But do you want me to give you a call, or do you want to give me a call? Or
let me eat quick, and then I will give you a call.
Yes, that sounds good. Does that work? Because I need to. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Bye, Country Boys.
All right.
See you later.
All right. Good day, ladies. Thanks, Beth.
Bye. Yeah, have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.